The temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees in the lavish restaurant as Morgan's words echoed across our table. "Oh my, Natalie is from a single-parent family? How commendable that you've managed to accomplish anything at all." My fingers clenched around my water glass as Brian's mother continued, her voice dripping with false sympathy while her eyes remained cold. "Being from a single-parent family, life must be quite hard, Dating someone like you would be so complicated for Brian." I glanced at Brian, my blind date and apparent heir to Sunrise Bank, who sat smugly beside his mother, nodding in agreement. The restaurant's ambient noise faded away as I watched them discuss my unfortunate background as if I weren't sitting right across from them, as if my mother weren't sitting right beside me, her back perfectly straight, her expression carefully controlled. "Presumptuous for commoners to think they could marry into a family like ours," Brian's father, Richard, muttered, not bothering to lower his voice. "Even if you try to bother us, it won't hurt you much since it's your money," Morgan added with a dismissive wave. "Useless poor people with low backgrounds." As I did the final check, confirming that yes, these people had invited us here specifically to humiliate us, I asked, "You're saying we should close our account with your bank, right? Please go ahead." They smiled with disdain, eyes filled with contempt as they stared at us. I decided it was time to give those who judge others by their background a taste of their own medicine. With that thought, I smiled. "My name is Natalie. I'm 29 and a marketing executive. This is the story of how I made a family of elitists lose everything they valued. I never expected to be ambushed like this." The blind date with Brian had been uncomfortable enough. His condescending attitude when he learned I worked for a major corporation rather than a prestigious financial institution, his constant self-aggrandizement, his dismissive glances. But when he suggested meeting our parents, I'd foolishly agreed, thinking it would be an easy way to end things with witnesses present. "Maybe you were just nervous because you haven't dated before," Mom had suggested when I'd told her about Brian's behavior. "The way he spoke was weird, Mom, like I was beneath him somehow." "Well, his parents will be there, right? Just say no if it doesn't feel right. I'll be there too." I'd apologized for dragging her into this, but she'd just laughed. "It's okay. Besides, I'm curious about Sunrise Bank." If only we'd known what they'd planned. When we arrived at the restaurant, our table was ready, but Brian's family was late. Deliberately, I realized later, to establish dominance. Richard offered no genuine apology for their tardiness, and Morgan immediately began her attack. "So where is your father? Is he coming later?" I looked at Brian, who just smirked dismissively. I'd already told him during our date that my father had passed away when I was young. They knew. This was calculated. Mom responded with remarkable composure. "My husband passed away from illness when Natalie was young, so today I'm here as her mother." That's when Morgan had raised her voice in that exaggerated manner, making sure nearby tables could hear. "Oh my, Natalie is from a single-parent family." Each comment cut deeper as they continued their performance. The worst part wasn't their cruelty, it was how rehearsed it felt, as if humiliating people they deemed socially inferior was a family pastime. "I'm not really into strong-willed women," Brian interjected when I defended myself, his tone suggesting I should be grateful he'd considered me at all. That's when Mom's patience finally broke. In 29 years, I'd rarely heard her speak so sternly. "Did you invite us here today just to look down on us? You're enjoying berating us for being a single-parent family, aren't you?" "Please stop with the accusations," Richard responded with mock offense. "It was just a little teasing, right?" "No one feels good being mocked, and all your remarks are condescending," Mom replied. "We have no intention of listening to this any further." Brian's family looked displeased at Mom's clear statement. "Presumptuous for commoners," Richard muttered. "Commoners, huh? Indeed, that may be the case, but this has made up my mind," Mom said. Brian's family looked briefly surprised, then burst into laughter, clearly thinking, "What could you possibly do?" Mom sighed and began to speak. "Actually, we have funds deposited with your bank, but we don't wish to entrust them to people like you." Oh, really? But we don't know your name, so it can't be much, right? It's probably insignificant. Morgan dismissed. That's right. Even if you try to trouble us with your funds, it won't really affect us. Low-class poor people are not needed, Richard added. I realized that even Mom's last attempt at reconciliation was in vain. They continued to speak disdainfully, unaware of who they were insulting. I sighed and made the final confirmation. We're closing our account, right? Please go ahead, they said in a mocking tone, their eyes filled with disdain, making me feel disgusted as they stared at us. That night, I made a call I hadn't expected to make for years. Grandpa Oliver, it's Natalie. I need your help. What's wrong, sweetheart? His voice was alert despite the late hour. It's about Sunrise Bank. A pause. What happened? I explained everything. The blind date, the family meeting, the deliberate humiliation. They didn't know who you were? His voice had changed, taking on the sharp edge I remembered from my childhood visits to his office. Number? And they made it very clear what they think about single-parent families and people they consider beneath them. Another pause. Longer this time. Come to my house tomorrow morning, both you and your mother. The next morning, Mom and I arrived at Grandpa Oliver's estate, ready to discuss our plan. As we sat in his study, I realized I had forgotten to mention something important. Grandpa, I recorded our entire conversation at the restaurant. I had a feeling things might go south, so I started my voice recorder app before we even ordered drinks. He nodded approvingly. Smart girl, that will be useful. 2 weeks passed. My phone buzzed constantly with calls from Brian, which I ignored and eventually blocked. Then came the call I'd been waiting for. Grandpa Oliver wants us at Sunrise Bank tomorrow at 9 a.m. I told Mom that evening. Are you sure about this, Natalie? They chose this fight, Mom. They just chose it with the wrong people. As instructed by Grandpa Oliver, Mom and I arrived at Sunrise Bank the following day at 9 a.m. The receptionist's eyes widened slightly when I gave my name. Of course, Miss Parker. Please follow me to the executive conference room. When we entered, Brian's family was already there, looking pale and uncomfortable. Morgan stood up immediately and rushed over to bow deeply. I didn't acknowledge her apology. Instead, I just smiled and asked, "What exactly are you apologizing for?" Morgan bit her lip, trembling with anger and frustration. There were too many things they should apologize for, which probably made her feel overwhelmed. This situation started because I said we would close our account. I continued. Our account wasn't particularly large, and closing it wouldn't have caused much damage. I paused, letting the tension build. But Grandpa Oliver's case was different. The door opened and Oliver Parker walked in, his presence filling the room instantly. At 78, he still carried himself with the authority of someone who expected and received immediate respect. Grandpa Oliver managed the inheritance my dad left at Sunrise Bank for our benefit. He also had his own accounts there. If all accounts, including Grandpa's and my dad's inheritance, were closed, it would total about $7 million. Richard paled visibly. I didn't know Natalie was related to the former CEO. That's no excuse, I said sharply. Even if you didn't know, your prejudice against our family is your own fault. You mean, if we were relatives, you would have treated us differently? Mom asked quietly. Hey, don't talk to Dad like that, Brian snapped. It's your fault for not telling us from the start that your grandpa was the former CEO. I don't have any obligation to tell a stranger like you that, I replied coolly. Besides, you were the one who started it and made fun of us, remember? Brian, unable to retort, narrowed his eyes in frustration. You insulted me knowing I was from a single-parent family. When I said I would close our account, you told us to go ahead. We just did as we were told. But it may be just that for you, but have you ever thought about the feelings of someone whose family has been insulted? Silence fell. Morgan was trembling, Richard was hanging his head, but Brian still seemed unconvinced, his face full of dissatisfaction. Getting all high and mighty just because people talk about you, he muttered. Grandpa Oliver's voice cut through the room like ice. Even after giving you a chance to reflect, you're still only thinking about yourselves. It's not my fault, it's her. Watch your words, Grandpa Oliver warned. If you continue, you'll end up even more miserable. Brian, silenced by Oliver's words, glared at me again. Then, as if resigned, he burst out. No way! Who would think a single parent's relative was the former CEO? You knew I was the future CEO and came to the family meeting just to mock us. Brian, be quiet, Oliver commanded, his gaze turning to Richard. I understand wanting to leave the bank to your son, but now that I know his mindset, it's impossible for him to continue as CEO. That's ridiculous over something like this. Richard started to protest but sat down again under Oliver's glare. You still don't understand that your attitude is the problem. Oliver's voice was deadly calm. Though I'm retired, the board will decide if you have something to say. Say it to them. Remember, we recorded the previous conversation and this one. Don't forget that the voice recorder will serve as evidence. I took out a voice recorder and pressed play. The restaurant conversation filled the room, their contemptuous voices echoing off the walls. How dare you prepare something like that? It's unfair, Brian shouted. It was just a precaution, I replied. But remember, you forced me into this situation. Brian had nothing to say in return, and their faces turned ashen. Thank you, Oliver said to us. We'll handle it from here. Mom and I left, the weight of the past weeks finally lifting from my shoulders. In the end, Grandpa Oliver didn't transfer the funds, at least not officially. Richard was removed from his CEO position, and Brian was demoted. Seemingly unable to handle the blow to his pride, Brian resigned voluntarily. Grandpa Oliver's influence in the financial industry meant Brian would struggle to find work in the same field again. Richard seemed determined to work until retirement, but Grandpa said it would be tough for him, both mentally and physically. Morgan, who used to wield power as the CEO's wife, apparently started part-time work to maintain her lifestyle, but her character likely made it hard for her to keep a job. I apologized to my friend who had set up the blind date. I'm really sorry about all this. It's okay. You didn't know, right? I only shared what happened with the friend who introduced me to Brian. She just heard about him through someone else and wasn't at fault. Mom had initially been concerned about being a single parent, but I reassured her. I'm happy now and can live thanks to the support I've received. When I told her that, she smiled and said, "Thank you." After everything was taken care of, Grandpa Oliver told us to come over to his house again sometime. I'm really grateful for his help in resolving the situation. It was tough, but I'm happy now, so it's okay. I have some good news, too. I've been promoted at work, something I earned through my own merit, not family connections. I'm not interested in dating right now, but I'm satisfied with my current life. I want to keep cherishing those who support me, and maybe someday I'll meet someone I really connect with, someone who values people for who they are, not where they come from. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. Zero cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.